afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. Ali Corman, Ed Carson here with a look at the action in today's session. And while it was another close in the red for the three major indexes, growth stocks actually had a day of outperformance today, Ed.
Yeah, there was a lot of stocks that did quite well. It makes it very tempting and hard to know how to deal with it. Matson, Zscaler, and Boyd Gaming all flashed buy signals, and a lot of others did too.
Okay, well, we'll check in on those. First, a look at the major indexes, but here's a look at QQQ, which tracks the NASDAQ 100, down about 0.25% today. The NASDAQ composite, though, down about 0.1% by session's close. We had the Dow down 0.3%, the S&P 500 down 0.25%. But on the upside, we had the Russell 2000 up about 0.5%. And we'll also check in on Ffty, which tracks the IBD Ffty ETF of leading growth stocks. It was up on the day as well. But first, Ed, your thoughts were, at least for the NASDAQ 100, starting to see a pretty noticeable pattern here of weakness.
Yeah, I mean, we're closing lower. I mean, for the fourth straight day, we're basically closing near session lows, just not positive action. That's the kind of action you see in corrections. I mean, okay opens and weak closes is a hallmark of bear markets and corrections. You know, where the rally attempt is still on, because whether it's all the indexes are above their recent lows, so it's still going on, but this is not a positive sign. You want to see a follow-through day coming in, and instead what we're seeing is weakness. It's very difficult because we're going to look at some of those leading stocks, and some of them had really strong days and broke out and were extended from the end of the day. But you know, it's not too inconceivable. We're getting closer to those lows. I mean, you know, we're falling further away from the 50-day line. We're falling away from the 21-day line on the NASDAQ. You know, it's not great news heading into the earnings season and a lot of other headlines.
Yeah, and checking in on the S&P 500 as well, also continuing lower. We were talking yesterday about how the gap has been filled and continuing the decline here for the S&P as well.
Yeah, just a few days ago, this was, you know, teasing the 50-day line, or almost there. You could see it was, oh boy, it's really getting there. And since then, just dragged down. You know, hasn't been very good on so far on that front.
Okay, and a quick look at the Dow and Russell 2000 here too. Clear resistance right at the 50-day line for the Dow, now coming down to its level that it saw on the 6th of October. And the Russell 2000 up a little bit on the day, but still really just in the same trading range that it's been trading in.
Yeah, it's hard to make a whole lot. It's not really doing, it's sort of having a narrowing V on sort of both ends of higher lows and lower highs. Eventually, that's going to have to address itself one way or the other. Yeah. Probably when the whole market does, to the upside or downside. But so it's just seeming to be going sideways.
Yeah, no clear direction. And let's also take a look at Ffty. So growth stocks up 1.7% today by this measure, Ed. But that's after getting hit pretty hard in late September, early October.
Yeah, so this is why, you know, you can look at some of those names, and some individual names did great. I mean, there's others that did not do well, but a lot of growth names had good days. So it can be really tempting to get in because they see these names, and maybe this chart doesn't look good, but plenty of others did. But you just don't know. If the market really sold off, you know, growth stocks will almost certainly come down too. Now, not everyone will come down, but most of them will. So today's action was nice. We had a decent gain on Thursday, though we hit resistance even on that day. So it's just hard. You can't, individual stocks are not going to, generally, very few are going to go against the market. And the market is just not showing positive signs at the very best you can say right now.
And impacting the action for growth stocks today, what about yields?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, yields came down. So that's probably good for growth stocks and good for a lot of the market, not for financials, but good for growth stocks and maybe the overall market. But the trend has been so high over the last several weeks. I mean, when we shot up in January, February, and March, the market peaked. And then even after the yields peaked, it took a while for, you know, the NASDAQ to really get going again, because it's like, you know, so just one day down isn't going to say, well, obviously this trend is broken. I mean, still well above the 10-day line. We've got the consumer price index tomorrow. We've got Fed minutes. Some Fed officials were talking about inflation today and Fed taper. So all that's going to be on the table in investors' minds over the next several weeks.
Something that we are watching very closely. And one stock that looked very hot today and a nice close was Matson in the transportation shipping group. We've been paying quite a bit of attention to Bulk, but also MATX on our radar in that same group. An 8% gain today, strong volume behind the move as well on preliminary Q3 figures.
Yeah, I mean, this was really strong. It had sort of broken out, then it pulled back to the buy zone of this larger consolidation, finding support generally around the 21-day line. Looked pretty good. I mean, it was looking pretty solid. So this is sort of an alternate entry, technically above 88.09, though I think probably would have wanted to get like as it bounced, as it gapped up on this preliminary number, like maybe not right at the open, but somewhere in there as it was moving, that would have been a better time to be jumping in, just because now it's getting up there quite a bit. But you know, we're heading into earnings season, and we saw some winners today on earnings and some losers from preliminary guidance. So this is really strong. It's nice to see it because it was sort of the calmest one of the bunch. It wasn't really going crazy like some of the others going down or up. Right. So nice action.
And taking a look at the weekly chart here, putting it into perspective as well, the relative strength line, very strong on this one. And yeah, the quarterly numbers have been good here. And the group rank, which is something that we also like to check in on, very strong for this group. So I guess the question is, should you be buying a stock that checks off a lot of the boxes, except for the overall market conditions, once again, not favorable?
Yeah, the only exception you could talk about is commodity related plays. And you can sort of argue some of these shipping companies are sort of in that commodity space. You know, maybe you can argue that that's an area where you can still play in, but you just have to know, you know, that you have to be very quick. You might even be thinking about trading like more like a swing trader, where you try to take at least partial profits fairly quickly to make sure you get something. And, you know, and then deal with it from there. It's just a tricky market.
And cut losses quickly too.
Oh yes, absolutely.
All right. And let's also look at Zscaler. This is a recurring theme that we're seeing in the software sector, with stocks pulling back to key support levels, creating these trend line entries. So Zscaler now in that group of stocks that have either flirted with trend line breakouts or successfully done so. And we did get a little bit of above average volume, it looks like, by the end of the day here.
Yeah, that was nice. The real strength line looks pretty good. That's at a new high before the stock. You know, there will be a base after this week unless the stock, you know, skyrockets or crashes. So it's working. This is an early entry going above the 50-day line, well, rebounding basically from around the 50-day line, the 21-day line, this trend line. Look, there's a lot of reasons. If this were a confirmed market rally, there'd be no doubt this is an entry, go for it, you know, kind of thing. You could have done this and you could still do it. But with the market being shaky, you just have to know, if you do something like this, just, you know, you have to be aware of that. You know, we could easily turn around again if things don't go well. But the security names, the security software, number 10 group out of 197, a lot of those stocks are doing well again after pulling back. So definitely one to watch right now.
Yeah, and we have Zscaler about 5.5% above the 50-day line. Looking at the weekly chart, about 3.4% above the 10-week line. So maybe if we see the stock hanging around these levels and we do get that follow through day, that's really what we're waiting for. But until then, it seems like investors should be patient. But as you said, Ed, at the very least, make sure that you have that risk under control more than ever.
Right.
Okay, and BYD, Boyd Gaming, are investors placing their bets? Well, the stock did gain about 4.3% today in some nice volume. We have earnings in just about 2 weeks' time. And MGM, what a strong move from that stock today.
Yeah, we're not talking about MGM because it's so extended now. I mean, it's sort of extended from an alternate buy point. You can argue some positive signs for travel generally and leisure because of COVID cases coming down. And, you know, so this one's breaking a trend line. The volume was above average. in that handle. So you could use this as an early entry. So there's reasons to believe that this will have legs where, whereas energy prices may or may not continue to go up. I mean, there's certainly a case for it, don't get me wrong, but you would think that maybe finally travel will not have that setback again. It's hard to guarantee that kind of thing. And that doesn't mean this will do well, but the trends have been moving, the business has improved. Obviously, a lot of the operations were down, but domestic casinos looking strong. And this was pretty good action and not greatly extended yet, hasn't even broken out yet.
And good to see volume, because I feel like that's another thing that we've been lacking in some of these potentially actionable stocks, is that powerful volume behind the moves.
Yeah, there's been some of these stocks have had big moves, and you look and it's like, man, you didn't even get above average volume on that day. So yeah, it's nice to see that. But again, all of these things, you can look at it. But yeah, the M in Can Slim is so important. And as I said, it's sort of like, at best you can say it's a lowercase m. It's starting to get erased and starting to look like an N, like not. And so I'm not very confident in how this market is going, but there's definitely some interesting stocks that people should at least be aware of.
Yes, that is very true. All right, Ed, thank you so much for that great analysis today. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow morning with more on IBD Live. So make sure you watch as we analyze potentially actionable stocks and provide you up-to-date analysis on overall market conditions and talk about portfolio management strategies. So looking forward to that. And we'll see you all there, investors.com/IBD Live. And we'll see you right back here after the close.